Hi everyone, I hope you're all well. Now today's video is 5 tips on how to self-manage your IBS. I've had IBS for like nearly 10 years now, and for the most part of that, pretty much nearly all of that, I felt very much alone in terms of having help to manage it. It's all come down to me and what I try and what I do by myself, because I've never found that doctors or anyone to be particularly helpful. So yeah, it is really all down to me for my IBS and to you for your IBS. Tip number 1 is to know your triggers and to keep a food diary. And I guess by keeping a food diary, you can get to know what your triggers are, because it is very difficult when you have, you eat so much food during a day to kind of realise, if you don't write everything down, what could have possibly made your gut flare up, for instance. And what can make your gut sort of get irritated can be very different to the next person. You might hear from a friend who says that this is the thing that makes them not feel well, get really bloated, feel sick and everything. And then another friend will say something completely different, and you could be completely different to them, or you could be the same as them. You don't know. So the most important thing is to keep a personal food diary for yourself. And it's also something really good if you do end up going to the doctors or seeing a dietitian. They'll probably ask you to do one anyway. And that way you can work out what your triggers are and maybe just attempt to remove something from your diet and see if it actually helps you. My second tip is to ask your doctor about the low FODMAP diet, and if they don't sort of respond that well to it, keep going back. And this is the same for everything to do with IBS. If you're not happy with what your doctor has told you, or has just said, go away for 8 weeks and then come back and we'll see you, or in my case recently, go away for 6 months and come back and we'll see what we can do. If that is the case, then you need to keep pushing at your doctor, pushing and pushing. Don't think that you are being annoying. Who cares if you are being annoying? If you are being annoying to your doctor, then your doctor's clearly not being a very good doctor, because they shouldn't care how many times you come back. If you are concerned with something, you should feel that you can comfortably go to the doctor and they can give you as much advice as possible. And also, if you're really struggling and for years and years you have gone to your doctor and you haven't been happy, you can change your doctor. You can change to a different doctor in your surgery, or I've moved house and stuff and moved to different doctor surgeries and found that some are better than others. So it's always worth thinking about that, because you need to get the right level of treatment. And stuff like the low FODMAP diet is something that some doctors seem to recognise, others don't. Some seem to say, go off and do it on your own, which is definitely something I don't recommend. And if they do that, you should say to them, I need to be referred on to a dietitian or a nutritionist, because I need to have professional help. It's a very restrictive diet, it's a very different diet to what you'd be used to, and therefore you definitely shouldn't be doing it yourself. So make sure you push your doctor in the right way always, and don't care what they think. My third point is to shop smart, because really, if you've been keeping a food diary and you get to know your triggers, then you should kind of know what you can and cannot eat. So obviously, reading labels is so important. Don't assume that something, if something says, oh, it's plain, that necessarily means it's plain. If, for instance, like me, as an example, I can't eat onion and garlic, there are loads of foods that when I initially realised that I had IBS and I initially found out that onion and garlic were triggers for me, I would have had no idea that certain foods contained onion and garlic. And now, honestly, I now know that to be so careful. But back then I didn't. And it can be just simple things like crisps, it can be like soups or sauces, or just literally, you'll be so surprised. So make sure you read every label, because we are all different, and it's not always the case that, you've been told that you have IBS and maybe you have, for instance, like me, had to give up gluten as a result. Don't just think, oh, well, if I buy stuff down the free-from aisle, that will be fine for me and my IBS won't flare up and stuff, because that's definitely not the case. The free-from aisle isn't always the best place at all. You can find stuff in other sections of the supermarket for much better prices, and that are also potentially better for you and your gut. My fourth point is really important in terms of self-managing your IBS, and that is to not risk anything. So you obviously now know your triggers, or hopefully you have an inkling about your triggers. If you're not sure if you can eat something or can't, if you go around a friend's house and they've provided food and they haven't got packaging, don't risk it if you're not 100, 200, 300% sure, because it's not worth it. You know what those symptoms are like when you have an IBS attack, or if it's anything like mine, it's awful. So, when you're around friends' houses, if you're going out for a meal and you can't be 100% sure, because there's a problem with restaurants often, especially chain restaurants. I find they have, you know, the 14 allergens, so you can find out whether there's gluten, milk, eggs, loads of things like that in your food, but there can be other things that trigger your IBS. So again, I'll go back to onions and garlic for me. These are not 14 allergen things, so you know, restaurants don't have to state that onion and garlic are present, but they could be, and you might not know, and you might think, oh, you know, I'm just having some plain chicken and some rice and stuff, but you know, I'll give Nando's as an example for this. Like, I used to go to Nando's and I'd order just plain, like really plain chicken, which I thought was fine, but I'd always get grief. Then I found out that plain to them actually still has garlic on, it's still cooked on the same grills where all the other stuff is, and it just has garlic on it. So it's a real issue like that. So my biggest thing is to not take risks, because I've taken risks in the past and regretted it so much, and I really don't want you to. Whether it's your birthday, whether it's someone else's birthday and you feel bad for spoiling it, you're not going to spoil it. You'll spoil it more if you have a bad tummy. Whether it's Christmas time, any time of year, on holiday, you think, that's the thing, you think when, let's say you're going on holiday, you don't want to spoil it for the other people with you, and you don't want to have to go to specific restaurants that, you know, cater for you. But what would be so much worse is if you're stuck to the toilet all day or in bed all day on your holiday because you ate something that you shouldn't. So do not take risk, it's not worth it. I think I've left my most important point till last. So point 5 is to be aware of stress and try to minimize it as much as you possibly can. So all the points so far have been generally just about food, but stress for me personally is what it always has been, the biggest trigger. I think my IBS sort of started and my gut health issues started because of stress, and it's always been that case. And I don't think people realise how much stress can affect you. So for me, sometimes foods that I am completely capable of eating usually, if I'm really stressed, I can't eat them. Sometimes when I'm stressed, I feel like I can't eat anything. I can't drink water without my stomach going funny, just because I feel like everything inside me is so tense, and anything can do that to me. And when I'm talking about stress, also, I'm not just talking about stress in a like anxious or unhappy way, but also in a really positive way. So if you're really excited that tomorrow morning you're getting up to go away on holiday, I've definitely had this in the past. When you're really excited to do something, the stress that you have, it's like positive stress, I guess, that can be equally as frustrating on your gut, and it can just really mess it up. I find that sometimes when I'm excited for something, for no reason, I'm just in pain lying down, and then it ruins it, and then I get stressed that it's gonna be ruined, and then you get more stressed. So I think the most important thing is to just be really aware of your stress. Be aware of certain situations that you might find yourself in where you can be stressed, and just think about it beforehand. And I know that one of the worst things that you can ever say to someone is don't stress, because if you say that, you'll become more stressed. But really trying to be aware of it, maybe writing it down when you feel that you're more stressed, stuff like that. I can't tell someone how to be less stressed, because I'm a really stressy person, and that's one of the biggest things for me. But if you can, be aware of it and try to reduce it as best you can. If you find that there's a stressful situation that you can maybe remove yourself from and you don't have to be there, do it, because it will be so worth it. So I hope you found my 5 tips on how to self-manage your IBS useful. Let me know in the comments below if you've got any other tips of how you self-manage your IBS in terms of food, stress, just general everyday life, whatever, because I'd be really interested from my perspective, and also I'm sure lots of people watching this will be interested too. So if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, go follow me on Instagram if you fancy, and I'll see you very soon. Bye!